Is it good to go?
I think we're good to
You think
go.
we're good
Over
to go?
to you.
Okay, fabulous. So good. All right, so I'm so excited to see everyone here today, and I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to ask you I've got some really cool tools that I'm going to be using today to make this webinar incredibly engaging. But please bear with me because they are new and I'm testing them out. I'm innovating as we're going through this session today. And bear with me if they don't work exactly as planned. But we're going to give them a test run. So what we're going to do is, firstly, I'm going to ask you if you can all tell me where you are in the chat. Open up the chat now. I'd like you just to tell me where you are in the world right now. You can type in a city, a town, a country, type it in the chat and press enter. And when we see everybody's uh, details, it'll actually start populating on the screen on our map, and we can see where everybody is coming from today. So we've got some people from Abu Dhabi, Herefordshire, Devon, UAE, Brighton, Margate, UAE, Dubai, Norfolk, Abu Dhabi again. Brilliant. Even some things popping up here. I can see we have some in the US. I'm not sure where specifically. Oh, maybe those are earlier ones, but brilliant. So we've got some people from all over the world, which is brilliant. I love to see diversity that we have in the room. That makes for really great innovation. So, um, two things, I'm going to just dive straight in. And two things are true at the same time, and you're really not going to like hearing this. Leaders are expected to deliver results really quickly, and leaders are also expected to innovate. You know this, right? You have to deliver outcomes, but also you're expected to innovate. And that's somewhere between your first coffee and your third back-to-back meeting. And you can see the problem with this, right? You can see the problem with this really clearly because productivity and innovation run on completely different mental operating systems. So I'm going to share my slide with you and just let me know if you can't see any of these, but if you can't, just make sure that I'm pinned and that you can have a look at these. The difference between innovation and productivity is one rewards speed, but the other punishes speed and actually needs time. Productivity loves structure, but innovation needs ambiguity and, open edges. Productivity focuses on execution, whereas innovation focuses on exploration. Productivity, you'll know, works best with very clear answers. So 1 + 1 = 2, and A and B, and wrong and right, and black and white, kind of contrast. But innovation begins with very unclear questions. It is very ambiguous. Productivity also optimizes what currently exists, whereas innovation really rethinks what exists. But wait, there's more. I really want to drive home the fact that there's a very clear difference between productivity and innovation. So productivity seeks efficiencies, whereas innovation seeks possibilities. Productivity delivers predictable outcomes, whereas innovation creates very uncertain outcomes. Productivity reduces the variation, so it actually creates, less in order to be efficient. You start to simplify to be efficient, whereas innovation experiments with options and variation. Productivity runs on clarity, whereas innovation runs on curiosity. Productivity improves the current system, but productivity actually questions the whole system itself and actually creates a whole new system. One of these, the productivity part, gives you this feeling of satisfying progress by Friday afternoon, whereas innovation gives you this vague sense that you might be onto something probably 18 months from now. You know this feeling, right? And most leaders just don't realize they're trying to be productive and innovative at the same time. So this in itself might be a huge insight for some of you. You might be thinking, oh, now it makes sense why I never have time for innovation and strategic work because I'm so focused on the outcomes. Or why, when I get to the end of the week and all I've done is make decisions and come up with these great ideas and anticipate problems, and I don't feel like I've been productive enough. Because it's a bit like trying to sprint and meditate at the same time. It's technically possible to do that, right? You can visualize yourself trying to do that, but it's unlikely that you're going to do either of those really well. So today I want to talk to you about the 6 habits that will allow leaders to stay highly productive while also creating the conditions for strategic and creative innovation and innovative thinking. I know you all know how to do innovative thinking, but it's about creating the space for that. So we're not necessarily going to speak about this at an organizational level. We're really going to talk about this at an individual leadership level because, as you know, organizations themselves aren't productive and innovative, but people are. And if enough individuals know how to balance these two modes of thinking and doing, then innovation at the organizational level will improve automatically. I like to think automagically sometimes. But for those of you who don't know me, I am Terez. I'm your executive coach for the next 45 minutes. And I love to help leaders build the future-ready skills, future-ready leadership skills specifically, so that they can move forward in this ever-changing world much faster. That's essentially what I'm focused on. So if you don't know me, you're welcome to go and find out and explore a bit about me on my website. But before we get into the 6 habits,
Hello.
oh, I can hear someone in the background. If you want to ask any questions, please add those to the chat. And I'm also going to ask Zena to take down those questions and make sure that we get to them at the end. But before we get to the 6 habits, I want you to know exactly the outcome that we're working towards in the next 45 minutes. Because if you stay to the end, we're going to really just redesign your week so that you can get 2 things back. One, you're going to make sure that you have protected thinking and innovation time. And then number 2, I really want you to have cleaner execution and productivity time. Cleaner as in you're able to be efficient during that time, that you're not pulled between 2 different expectations. There's also a bigger outcome here that I want to speak about, and it's about getting to the end of the week and realizing that you've done enough, that you were productive and you also created momentum on your longer term goals. The feeling of, I get to the week and I feel like I've done enough and I can just relax. That is one of the biggest results that my clients come to me for. So I'm also going to give you a simple 7-day scorecard so that next week you can actually rate yourself and figure out where you're sitting on this scale of innovation and productivity and if you're balancing both. But you have to stick around to the end if you want to get that scorecard. So I'm going to ask you a really quick question. I want to ask you, let me just get all my functionality working. If you could describe your typical week in one word, what would it be? Just one word. I'd like you to drop that word into the chat. What does that week feel like for you? What does your typical week feel like for you? Tell me. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Get all your... Oh, we got some hectic. This is a word cloud, so we're seeing some hectic happening over here. Get all your words out. How does it feel for you? If you could describe your typical week in one word, what would it be? Drop that word in the chat. All right, so we've got some hectic, unpredictable, relaxed, active, non-stop. Oof. Busy, variable, lots of operational work, challenging, relaxed. Oh, I need to speak to that person. We all need to speak to that person. How was it relaxed? Challenging, active, brilliant. All right. What I love about this is that you can instantly see the range of experiences in the room. Like some weeks, people feel very focused, some feel relaxed, some feel nonstop, some feel hectic. Leadership tends to include all of these different seasons and sometimes often in the same day. You'll know this too. So, what we're going to do is we're going to get started on the habits, but the first thing that I want to share with you really quickly is a story. And you'll probably know this story It's about a chemist in Minnesota in the 1960s, and his name was Spencer Silver. And he was trying to invent a very strong adhesive glue, but instead he creates the opposite. You couldn't call it super glue, it was more like inadequate anti-glue. And on paper, it was a failure. Well, literally and figuratively. But Silver didn't throw the glue away. He just kept talking about it internally for about 5 years. And he was basically telling everybody, I've made this glue, it doesn't really stick, and I think it might be very useful. And at the time, it was, an idea, but it had no real use. And then down the line, 5 years later, his colleague hears about this and he thinks of his paper bookmarks that keep falling out of his hymn book at church. And he goes to Silver and he says, "You know that very low tack adhesive glue that you made? Can I use it maybe to make a bookmark into my hymn book that sticks slightly and then peels off cleanly?" This product has now made billions of dollars in revenue. And you'll know this one, right? It's the post-it notes, the hallmark of every innovative person. I love a post-it note. So I know I'm talking your language when I tell you about the post-it note, but there's a lesson in here worth remembering. Silver treated the idea itself as progress long before it had a clear use. And I think that many leaders dismiss ideas too quickly because they cannot yet see the outcome that it's made for. But some of the thinking that you're doing today may only reveal the value months or sometimes years from now. In fact, you might already be sitting on the thinking that leads to a $1 billion decision, a $1 billion product, or a $1 billion system or move or innovation. Can you imagine? I mean, just imagine that could be even a possibility. So future-ready leadership really requires a very different measure of progress. It's not just about the outcomes, but also about the quality of thinking that produces those outcomes. So I want to ask you, are you recognizing your ideas as progress? Or are you only rewarding the results later on when they appear? This is it's a big mindset shift, but this is what this session is going to be all about. So let's move on to I'm actually going to do a quick poll. I think that might be it before we get to the habits. I'm going to do a quick poll and I want to ask you a question, which is, where does most of your time go at work? Is it on productivity and execution mostly? Just type A in the comments. If it's a mix of productivity work and strategic and innovation work, type B. In the comments, if it's mostly that strategic and innovation work, then type C. But if you're mostly working on problem solving and firefighting, then just put D in the comments. There's no right answer here. I'm just curious about the distribution across the group. Let's have a look and see where those answers are at. Just put them all in the comments and let's see where we're at. All right, so we've got some on productivity and execution, mostly maybe the majority there, and then some working on a mix of that productivity work and strategic innovation work. Yeah, and quite a few also in problem solving and firefighting. So it's quite a big mix in this team. Brilliant. I love it. Okay, so moving on to our first habit. Oh, I've actually missed something here. Let's go back. Let's not move on to our first habit. Let's go back to what I have missed because I think this is going to be important. One of the things that I think leaders don't always see is that they may get promoted into roles where the work becomes less tangible. Because early in your career, you'll know this, right? You are rewarded for things like creating spreadsheets and writing reports and sending emails and calling suppliers and getting dopamine as soon as you do the task. But as you move up, things change. When you become a leader, your to-do list becomes more about thinking about the strategic direction, anticipating market conditions, influencing people, deciding on big cultural policies and things like that, or even, contemplating resigning and owning a smoothie bar in Bali, which is a lot of what my clients like to tell me that they really, really want to do. But when you move into leadership position, a lot of your output of your work becomes far less visible. And strategy feels very ambiguous. There's no right or wrong answers. Innovation feels very uncertain. And you can work an entire week and then struggle to point to something actually concrete. So the brain hates that. And this is why leaders very unconsciously retreat back into doing the operational work. It's not because they lack the strategic ability, it's because that operational work, like emails and spreadsheets and reports, gives them something that strategy doesn't, which is that closure, that dopamine, that ticking off something, that actual tangible result. So the first step in solving this tension between productivity and innovation is to recognize it. To recognize if you're trying to be productive versus needing to be innovative or strategic. And that moves beautifully onto our first habit, which is stop trying to be productive and innovative at the same time. I think just knowing this and knowing whether you can separate the two and being very intentional with what it is that you're working on will be incredibly helpful. Will make that productivity cleaner, but also that innovation more exploratory and more innovative too. So because trying to do both at the same time will create that cognitive friction. We saw the difference between the two and the different operating systems that are required. There's also fascinating research from behavioral science that shows that when people are placed under very strict performance targets, their creativity actually drops dramatically. And this makes sense because when you want to, go after performance, you will just keep doing what's always worked. So you're optimizing what you've always done. And therefore, there's no room for creativity or exploration. There's too much risk involved in that. And it explains why innovation often disappears inside very hyper-productive cultures. So the first habit is very simple. Separate these modes. Just knowing this, like I said, will be so helpful, but actually using this knowledge uh, to actually separate them is going to be helpful too. So make sure that you have separate productivity time and innovation time. When you separate them, also start measuring your progress differently. It will mean that you can start valuing your work on strategy and innovation more, and then also start to use that to communicate these ideas more and communicate them in a way that says, hey, this is innovative, this is strategic, this is something that we're exploring. It's not something that's going to have very clear boundaries and constraints, but this is how we're going to deal with it differently. So I'm also going to give you some ideas of some ways that you can stop being productive and innovative at the same time. These are some of the ideas that I offer to my clients. So number one is add that innovation and strategic time in your calendar. Please just add it in for now. I know it's also about getting to doing that work, but we're going to talk about how you can get to do that work down in a few more habits. Either front load your week with this type of thinking. And even just so you know, 3M, the company that produced the post-it notes, they actually they give their people 15% of time to work on strategic and innovative ideas. I know a lot of organizations do this in many different ways. Also, batch your productivity tasks on your calendar. So do all your emails in one go, all your meetings in one go, all your project work, or your spreadsheets, reports, do them all in one go if possible, because that will keep you more efficient for that time. And then also start measuring your innovation and strategy outputs as progress. Really ask yourself at the end of the week, what have I done that's actually moved the innovation and strategy forward? And that's going to be a progress marker for you. And then one of the other things that I think not a lot of people do is collect your ideas. Whatever idea it is, start collecting it. And then you can also start sharing those ideas, start building on those ideas, and create a place that you can search for them. They may be helpful down the line. Alrighty. I think there are some questions here. Alan says, I write a list and then don't use it. I don't know why. Interesting. That's worth coaching on. We can maybe speak about that a little bit down the line at the Q&A. And then Khalud says, recognize where you're doing operational work versus strategic work. The list usually helps me with that, for sure. have your list and make sure that you can tell the difference. Alrighty, so habit number 2 is optimize for value and not time. I want to correct one of the most persistent myths in leadership. A lot of people say time is money, but that is not true at all. Value is money.
حبيبي
Value
بيتم
creation
استغلال ساعتين
is money.
ونص
The value
ساعتين
that you
ونص
create in products and services
أقول لك الساعة
is
ساعتين ونص
is I think someone's not on mute, but we'll leave them to get on mute. But the value that you create in products and services is the money, right? Even at an employee level, your work, the work that you do, even if it's not directly, you can't see it directly impacting the revenue or the value creation for your customers, it is still value creation. And I think we spend a lot of time thinking about time management and I don't have enough time and there's not enough time to be able to complete this task and change takes a long time. I think that really puts a constraint on the fact that value is not created with time. It's created through our thinking. It's not created through the hours that we spend on something. It's on the quality of what we think. And a 2-minute decision or even like a 10-minute thinking can create more organizational value than, putting in 2 weeks of work. Just a question can shift the value in a project, a single question. So it's the reason why I love asking my clients questions, because when you ask questions like that really opens up the thinking, you can increase the value that you get. Like a question of how can you increase the value of this meeting while also halving the time spent? That's the type of question I was saying. Then suddenly you're saying like, what is it that I need to do? What is the most important thing I need to say in this meeting in order for me to get the best outcome? It's also why leadership is, really just focusing on being busy and busy all the time because we're so focused on time and not value. So the quality of your thinking and your questions will drive way better strategy and also communication and decision making and also team performance. So if your value comes from hours, I'm also going to show you like a little thing here, right? So if you think about it, if you're working just on time-based work and productivity, the value that you can create, if you're doing the same things over and over again, the value you create is just going to be limited by a ceiling of 24 hours or 8 hours in your working day, or 10 or 12, just depending. But if you're talking about quality of thinking, different questions, creating systems, innovation work, then the value that you can create is actually unlimited. It's exponential. It doesn't hit the ceiling every single time. There's something that I also want you to know is that right now, I'm going to just segue really quickly because I remembered an article that I wrote recently that I really believe that we're no longer living in a knowledge economy. We're moving into a thinking economy. For the last few decades, knowledge was the advantage. If you knew more, then you were more valuable. But knowledge has now become a commodity. You can open up ChatGPT and ask a question, and it can produce something that looks like a PhD level explanation on any topic. So knowledge is no longer scarce, but thinking is. Innovative strategic thinking is. AI can analyze the past knowledge and it can synthesize past thinking, but it can't access future thinking, imaginative thinking. That's what humans do. We create and we imagine, and innovation literally lives in that future-based thinking. So habit number 2 is stop confusing time with value. Your thinking is your value. Let's go back here. There we go. So some ideas of what you can do here is just ask better questions. Instead of asking questions like, how long is this going to take or who's going to do this? Let's ask questions like, what would make this dramatically more valuable? What problem are we actually solving here? Is there a faster, simpler, better way to achieve this outcome? Every single question is going to help you increase that value. Another way that I like to offer clients is use opposite questions. So, for instance, if someone comes to you with an objection and says, we can't do this under the current constraints or with the current time or resources that we have, let's ask the question, the opposite. How could we do this under these constraints? What needs to be possible for us to be able to do this? And that will reveal some great solutions. And then ask the question, what is the highest value thing that I could be doing with my time? Ask yourself this question every day. What is the highest value thing that I could be doing with my time this week and today? That will really open up some very clear answers for you. Okay, habit number 3. Think like an entrepreneur inside the organization. I think one of the most powerful mindset shifts for leaders that they can adopt is this. You are not an employee. You are the asset. You are an entrepreneur inside your organization and you're selling a service. You're selling value. Entrepreneurs often ask the question like, where is the opportunity? Where can I create the highest value use of my time? Whereas if you think like an employee, you need to say, well, what needs to be done? What things do I need to tick off? Those kinds of questions. Who needs what from me now? But entrepreneurs will always be asking, what's the highest value? What actually matters here? This mindset shift, remember, you could absolutely do things exactly the way you've been doing them before, but I love to build future-ready leadership skills. What do you need to do to be able to stand out in this world? And I really believe it comes down to the thinking. So this shift of thinking like an entrepreneur really changes how you use your time, how you think about your value, how you design your role, how you ask questions, how you negotiate in your career. The moment you see yourself as the asset, your job becomes very clear. And all you need to do is protect the asset, develop the asset, create value with it, and use that asset so that it can create the most value for your client, which is the organization that you're in or the organizations that you're working with. So this thinking is where you're going to be able to create the most value. Well, your thinking time itself is where you're going to be able to create the most value. So here are some ways that you can do this. Number 1, protect the main asset. You are the core asset. You have to protect it. I always see a lot of leaders who leave their well-being and their exercise and their nutrition on the last, their life-work balance. It's the last thing on their list. But you're the asset. If you think like an entrepreneur, you have to protect that asset at all costs. The second thing is build more assets. So when you're in the organization, you can use your thinking to create more systems, more frameworks, more things that can be duplicated and taught to other people. That will be hugely valuable for the organization. And then also ask, where do I create the most value currently, and scale that. I love to tell my clients, whatever your strengths are, scale them. Just do more of them. Ask people, what are my strengths? And then either teach them, duplicate them, create systems for them, coach people on them. When you can scale that, you're going to add way more value to the organization and your clients. Alrighty. Lindsay asks, I love this question, what is the purpose and output of the meeting to try and keep people focused? Absolutely, for sure. We need to be asking that in every single meeting. Make sure that everybody is aligned to that specific outcome. Alrighty, let's move on to...
Just to highlight, that comment came from an earlier comment, which I think we all suffer from around. You can't imagine how many meetings that they have to attend on an everyday basis that really doesn't add value. And I know that I was the same when I worked in corporate. And for me, it was almost about a fear of missing out. And so a few people suggested options, but if you've got any ideas on kind of how do you say no to meetings in a nice way if necessary?
So good. That's brilliant. And I didn't see all the other comments that came before that. I was looking really just at the end. For sure, we're actually going to talk about meetings in a second because I think there are some very clever ways. So let me park that for now because I think I will answer that question for you. Habit number 4, and I know I really want to make sure we've got time for questions and answers as well. Habit number 4 is really design your week around energy and not tasks. So remember, it's about value, not time. Creating value with your thinking and not time, but also designing your week, if you're the asset, around your energy and not the tasks that you have to do. So this could also be a conversation about meetings, but I think specifically it's about having so many meetings in your calendar. But a lot of people plan their calendar around availability. If you really want to be a future-ready leader, then you have to plan it around your cognitive energy. Did you know that strategic thinking and innovation are actually, they use a lot of metabolic resources in the brain, and they actually require up to 67% more energy than when you're using your brain for other standard working functions. 67%. That is a lot, which means that if you want to do innovative thinking or strategic thinking, it has to be when your brain is fresh. So, I mean, I know a lot of leaders who start their week with all the reactive stuff, emails, meetings, admin requests, and then they try and attempt to do innovation at 4 o'clock when their brain is mashed potatoes, quite frankly. So what I really recommend is front load your week with the thinking if possible. Now, I know a lot of you are in organizations where, you can't always, you have meetings that are already in the calendar and they're already front loaded. This may require some uncomfortable thinking, uncomfortable conversations with your managers, your upline, to say, can we create some space at the beginning of the day that means that we're not doing meetings between 8 and 10 or 9 and 10 in the morning, that we have this space to be able to do some deep work and some strategy work or innovation work. So I always recommend front load your week with thinking, put innovation and strategy in that first cognitive part of your day, and then use the low energy times for execution and productivity work. Those are the things that you've done 100 times and your brain can do them when they're half asleep, whereas strategy cannot. It needs 67% more cognitive power. So Victor says, design your day around your energy as well. I have to do strategic thinking first thing. Exactly. A lot of people have different cognitive peaks as well. So you might want to figure out when is the best time for you. But for a lot of people, I think the majority is in that morning space. So some of the to-do lists is front load your week with innovation and strategy. Front load your week or your day. If you can take an hour or even 30 minutes before you start your day to do some thinking time, that would be amazing. Also, batch your reactive work. Keep your emails into batch times instead of having to switch to them at random times during the day. And as a rule of thumb, like if you have high energy, that's for your thinking time, medium energy is for decisions, and then low energy is for execution time. That's a simple framework that you can use. But we're going to talk about meetings. I know we're going to answer that question in a second. I think it's going to be the last habit. So hold on to that thought. I really want to make sure that I answer this question for you. Habit number 5 is use movement as a thinking tool. This may not be obvious to everybody, but a lot of innovation doesn't happen at the desk. It happens when you're in motion. It happens when you're moving. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, all truly great thoughts are conceived while walking. And he wasn't very wrong because modern neuroscience also says this. There was a study from Stanford that showed that walking actually increases creativity by about 60% compared to when you're sitting. 60%! That's a lot. That's huge. So movement increases the blood flow, of course, to the brain, and it also stops us from ruminating and overthinking, which means that your brain becomes more capable of making more novel connections. It actually uses a different a part of the brain when it's walking. Your ideas tend to wander, or your thoughts tend to wander. And this is also why maybe your best ideas sometimes appear in the shower or while driving or just before falling asleep. You'll know where your best ideas come from. But this is because the brain solves problems only when it's relaxed enough to enable it to connect ideas freely, to create these novel connections. So one of the habits that I teach my clients is actually a daily strategy walk, where you go and you think, you just think. There's no phone, no podcast, you just go for a walk, and you can even take a strategic question or a problem that you want to solve and just let your mind wander. Don't have a specific output in mind, but just have that question in your mind and just think through that question. You will be amazed how often the clarity will appear when you're halfway down the street. You don't have to go out into the street either. You can just go for a walk around the corridor, put your headphones on, make sure that people don't distract you. But even then, you could still have that thought in your mind and carry it with you throughout the day. That is really one of the ways that you can create more innovation. Innovation just rarely lives behind a laptop. It is actually something that comes to you in sparks throughout the day when you're in motion, when you're doing lots of things. You can also, a lot of my clients also do walking meetings, which is brilliant for a lot of creativity. And Zena has mentioned the walking track in Dubai Mall. Yes, go to the walking track in Dubai Mall and take a long strategy innovation walk around there. And also, or hold a walking meeting. You'll be able to create some creativity and innovation with your team as well. So here are some ways that you can not design your week around your energy, that's incorrect, but to use movement as a thinking tool is take that daily strategy walk. You can also use movement when you're stuck with something. So get up from your desk, walk around, go speak to someone. Suddenly that problem may resolve itself as you're walking around. Hold walking meetings. You can also transition. You can also use transitions between meetings into thinking time. So instead of worrying about something, just bring that thought back of what you're working on or that question you want to answer. Start thinking about that in that transition between your meetings. Sometimes it might something might pop in your mind as you're transitioning. And then also carry that innovation question or that strategy question with you throughout the week. Alrighty, this is where we're going to talk about meetings. Are you ready? Habit number 6. Before we get there, actually, I'm going to ask a very quick poll. Tell me in the comments, where do your best ideas usually appear? What are you doing when your best ideas usually appear? Type them in the comments. Are you in meetings? Are you at your desk working? Are you walking or exercising? Are you in the shower? Are you, just let me know. Let's see so let's have a look and see what we got here. So Alan says at the gym, while driving, in a training course, running or listening to music while driving. I think a lot of you need to do a lot more driving. Where else? Before I sleep, unfortunately. Oh, Khalud, I feel for you. I mean, if that's where it's happening, make sure that you have a notebook next to you and you can write down those great ideas. While traveling abroad, of course, because your mind's open and you're relaxed if it's on holiday, or you're just open to all these new places, this diversity. Brilliant. Driving. I think it seems like a lot of you need to do a lot more driving. Like I said, scale the things that work. All right, but it's great, right? We all find our ideas in different places. Let's go to habit number 6. Optimize or subtract. So we're going to talk about your calendar because this is a fine place where a lot of our productivity and innovation gets created. And there's actually only 2 things that we can do with our calendar if we want to create more space for strategic and innovative thinking. We can either optimize what's already there, or we can subtract. That is it. That is all we can do. So what we want to be able to do is create more space to be able to think differently and to think more innovatively and spend more time on that thinking. So like I said, you can only optimize what's already there. If your calendar is in back-to-back meetings, then the only thing that you can do is either optimize it, you can reduce the time or improve the quality in that time, or you can subtract it. That is it. So if you're in back-to-back meetings all day, every day, and you don't have time for strategy and innovation work, my suggestion is really to start thinking about, can you optimize those meetings? Can you reduce a 60-minute meeting to 45 minutes, a 30-minute meeting to 20 minutes? Can you, how can you increase the value of that time? How can you get to the outcome faster? Or how can you subtract it? Subtracting from that calendar is a very different move entirely. And it means that we need to be asking, should this meeting or this task actually exist in the first place? Does it need to happen? What would break if we stopped doing it? Who else could own it? And this is where you start to create really big space. So, I mean, if you look at this calendar, this isn't my calendar, but this is not creating a lot of space, but what you want to be able to do is go into your calendar for the past week and actually see, can I optimize this and can I maybe delete this going forward? That is, I would really say, run a weekly calendar audit on your calendar and actually just see, do I optimize or subtract? Those are the only two things that we can do. So here are some of the to-dos and things that you might want to consider. A weekly calendar audit, optimize or subtract. Ask yourself the question, should this meeting exist? Also, when you optimize, you can also increase the quality or the value with what stays. And in that way, it might mean that you can, it might actually create more value for that time that you're in. And also protect the space that you have for innovation and strategic time. It's your asset, your thinking time, and that time that you have with yourself to think or with others to think is probably one of the most important things, but you're not going to see the progress of it down the line. You have to just mentally put your head around those kinds of that kind of difference. Alrighty, so those are the 6 habits, and I'm going to ask you really quickly. We're going to do one more word cloud. What do you think creates the most value in your organization for you in your role as a leader? So what is the one thing that creates the most value in your role in your organization right now? I would like you to type that in the comments, and we're just going to see what comes up. I'm going to read some of the questions as well. Khalid says, I start subtracting by, does this meeting actually change anything? Oh, that's a great question. Brilliant. Could this meeting be communicated in an email? Of course. I think those are really powerful questions, and that's exactly what we can do, right? To optimize or subtract. 5 to 10-minute meetings. Hanan, thank you. That's a great suggestion. Alan says, in my previous company, we had lots of stand-up meetings, short and focused. Absolutely, because you can't be standing for a long time. You want to actually get the meeting over and done with. It's like a forced function there. All right, so we've got the most valuable part of your role. What creates the most value in your role as a leader? We've got collaboration, interactions with other colleagues, discussions, communication, empowerment, all of these things, creative space with other colleagues. I'm not sure why some of these things aren't coming up here. Giving permission to fail and learn. Absolutely. All of those things are what create value in the organization. And that's what this is all about, is how do we spend more time on the things that create more value? A lot of it has to do with our thinking and then our collaborative thinking with others. And so many leaders, don't do well at this because, not because they lack intelligence or the social connections, it's because, literally, just because we're sometimes trying to run both of these systems at the same time. So when you separate them, everything improves. Execution becomes sharper and innovation also becomes possible as well. So if there's one thing that I want to leave you with, it's that. Make sure that you're able to separate the two. Alrighty, any questions? I know that we're at time, but if there's anybody who would like to hang around and ask some questions, I am very willing to answer those for you. I'll also share with you on my screen the place where you can go and get the downloads of this. You can get these. You can get the the PowerPoint. I can't even think straight right now. My brain needs a break. And on it, we'll have this 7-day productivity scorecard. So you'll be able to score yourself on how you're doing every single week on each of these habits. Habit 1, habit 2, habit 3, 4, 5, and 6. Just scan the code, the QR code, and you'll be able to go and download these notes now. Any questions? And also, yes, if you'd like to get in touch with Ideas UK and get these on their email, I think I can send them through to the email as well. But is there any questions that we have? Zena, what are your thoughts? Tell me.
Well, as always, first off, absolutely fabulous. So thank you for sharing all those top tips. And it's been lovely that actually everyone's been so engaged through the chat function. I think almost needing more time is something that we all think we need more of. But as you rightly say, maybe it's how we think and how we push, certainly for me, my fear of missing out onto the back burner to say no to certain things, to give me that time and space to be strategic, to think, to be innovative, and also to come to sessions like this to give you inspiration, which I think is always useful. So thank you so much. Does anybody have any last questions for Terez? I'll also drop her contact details into the chat function as well, if that's okay with you, Terez. We've got a takeaway.
Yeah, one take. Yeah, carry on, Zena.
Go on, over to you.
Well, thank you, Khulud. When people say multitasking, I usually say multi-focusing, meaning doing many things at once. But in reality, we are focusing on one thing at a time and switching between them the most effective way. So let's just, oh, sorry, it's just popping up. I love that. Multi-focusing. Yeah, and then also being able to switch between them in the most effective way. Absolutely. I think that's if that's working for you, Khalid, great. Hanan says, how do these habits need to evolve as AI and automation reshape leadership roles? Oh, that's a brilliant question. I think they always are going to need to evolve, right? I think we're going to get to a space where, things our working day is going to be so different. What the value that we add is going to be very different, which is why I was talking about that shift between no longer being the people who are trying to use knowledge, because knowledge is just a commodity. We can find it anywhere. Anybody can access any knowledge, but it's our interactions and collaboration with each other is going to be where innovation, I think, everybody's role in innovation is going to be so important over the next at least the next few years, because the way that humans think is very different to how AI currently thinks. The questions that we can ask, the random attachments that we can make is completely unique to humans. It's kind of like, there was a person who found this medicinal drink in Bali, and he obviously went on wanted to open up a smoothie bar in Bali, but he went to Bali and he found this medicinal drink, and it tasted a bit like urine. It looked a bit like urine, but then he thought, and he asked himself the question, how can I turn this into um, a multi-billion pound drink in a small can, charge more for it, and actually go up against Coca-Cola? AI is not going to come up with that solution. Humans are going to come up with those kinds of solutions and that kind of thinking. But it does take brave, bold thinking to get there. And I think, Hanan, if you are focused on your thinking, your quality of thinking, your questions, then your habits are going to evolve just from that space. Just focus on that thing, that one thing. Great question, though.
Perfect. And I think that is the best place to leave it for today as well. We all need to focus on our thinking. Thank you so much, Terez.
Thanks,
Thank you to
everybody.
everyone for
So good to
joining
be
us.
here.
And
Bye.
join us again next month. Thank you.
Bye.